And we're live. We're live. It is Wednesday. It is Hump Day. And we're live. Another day. We're live. Oh, you might want to pay. Oh, Wednesday, am I not on mute? Hump Day. One of us is not on mute. No, it was me. All right. It is yet another day working on one of my favorite projects of all time, and I'm not just saying that because the man of the hour is with us, Stephen Chenault himself. But this is the Castle Keeper's Guide with, I wanna say, Stephen, you are the Castle Keeper himself. Welcome to the stream.
Thank you for having me.
I'm delighted to have you here. You and I have been on a couple of streams together. It feels like an eternity since we were on the last one. And in the meantime, I've been working on this map for you, and I absolutely love this project. I've got to be honest with you. What? Tell us, for the people that don't know, tell us a little bit about you. And am I pronouncing your name correctly? Your last name, Stephen Chenault?
Yes, Stephen Chenault. If we were in France, I think you would drop the T.
Right.
Barring that, we're good to go. So I'm Stephen Chenault. I am CEO or president of Troll Lord Games. I got to figure out which of those titles works. I think that to be CEO, I have to actually have other officers. So I think technically I'm the president. But
doesn't that also make you like the? Are you Troll Lord? Are you literally the Troll Lord?
I am the Troll Lord. Yes, I am he who sits on the elephant's back. That's what. That's my official internal title, the Troll Lord. But yeah, there's a bunch of Troll Lords, but I'm the Troll Lord.
You are the main one.
Main one for whatever that is worth.
So tell us. Okay, I've been getting asked a lot while I've been working on this project, like, what is the Castle Keeper's Guide? Now, actually, quite a few of the people that join the channel, they know what this is because they actually own the first one. But can you tell us a little bit about the Castle Keeper's Guide?
Absolutely. So the Castle Keeper's Guide was conceptualized a long time ago, back in about 2010 or something like that. And it is the, for lack of a better word, it's the DM's guide for castles and crusades. When we originally did the game, the only really required book was the player's handbook, and that's still the case. The monster book is extraordinarily helpful. But later, we'd always kind of envisioned doing some kind of game master's book. And once the player's handbook and the M&T had been out, and we had modules and the whole system was well supported, then we dove into the Castle Keeper's Guide. And essentially what I did when I put it together is I brought in quite a number of writers, James Ward, Casey Christopherson, my brother Davis, myself. I wrote probably about half of it. There's a whole bunch of folks that dove into Mike Stewart, Jason Bay, and Mark Sandy. There's a whole bunch of them. It's been so long I actually had to go to the credits and read Robert Doyle. A lot of folks just got in and wrote whole sections of the book. And essentially what it is a book of rules, supplemental rules, and how-to guides for CKs. That's Castle Keepers are the GM equivalent in Castles and Crusades. And it's just chock full of just mountains and mountains of material. It's from the game notes that I created over years and years and years to new and adjunct rules that go to Castles and Crusades. So CNC doesn't have any skill section, have any skills or feats or anything like that. But in the CKT we've got a whole section called advantages, which are essentially the same thing. So if you want to expand your CNC game, you can do that. But it goes from we dive into magic, equipment, non-player characters. We do a whole how-to on creating a world, a whole how-to on creating a city, and that's where your maps come in, actually, with the city and the world sections. Then there's air campaigns, water campaigns, extra combat. It's just filled with all kinds of stuff. We took as our inspiration the original first edition Dungeon Master's Guide.
I was going to say, is this like the Dungeon Master's Guide?
Yes, but it really the whole purpose behind it wasn't to instruct people on this is the way you play Castles and Crusades. It was really to give them just essentially a toolbox filled with a mountain of stuff that they can take or leave whatever they want, or if they need the quick reference. For instance, there's a chart in there that gives you the price of food at an inn and how much it costs to stay the night. So if you just need quick reference stuff like that, it's in there. We've got lists of ships, types of wagons. It's just absolutely chock full of it. And when we originally put the book out, it took forever and a day to actually get this book done. I got a shout out to Shane Bradley, who I always do. He pre-ordered it back in 2011, and it didn't actually come out till 2014 or something. He was on the pre-order list for almost.
That's a patient dude.
It is. Yeah, we love Shane to death. I see him every year at Gary Con, talk to him on Facebook. But yeah, he is the most patient dude.
So what was the incentive for redoing it? Is it a different rule system that you're doing it for, or just like you've got whole new fresh content that you want to put in here?
Well, the primary reason is we sold out of the second printing. So this is the third printing, I think, right? This is, yeah, right, yeah. You can always tell, just so people know, I don't know if you can see this. Can't get my camera lined up. But if you look at the spines of our books, you'll see, nobody can make that out too far.
Oh, there you go. No, we can see the number right there.
Okay, so if you see a 2 at the last of it, that means it's the second printing. If you see a 3, it's the third printing. So the second printing sold out. First printing, of course, sold out, and the second printing sold out. So it was time to revisit it. And this it worked out well because I'd kind of re-envisioned doing the covers and having a little bit of a different approach to what we were doing on the covers. And then one of the things it's always, for me as a gamer, what I need is a lot of visuals. So when it's one thing to go to a book and read what this type of wagon is, but I kind of need a visual for it. So then I started going through the CKG thinking, I didn't really want more content primarily because if we get much bigger than the book is now at about 350 pages, you start putting stress on your binding. I really don't like to go over 400 pages on a book. It subtracts from the longevity of the book, and we're pretty stringent on keeping our books intact because they see a lot of use. Everybody's game books do. But anyway, so I didn't really want to add a lot of more content, but what I did want to do was add a lot of illustrations. And the first thing that popped up were wagons and then the ships. So we've got all of those illustrated. And then when I was going through it, you and I, of course, were working on Gaxmore at the time. And I was just absolutely falling in love with your maps because I enjoy watching your streams and watching how you actually do all of this stuff. And I think it's actually when you told me, it's right before or right after you told me that in the Gaxmore map, you started adding all of these little things, story elements to the map, the chariot that was knocked over in the Colosseum and stuff like that. And that just fired me up about, we really need illustrations for these cities so people can envision what it is that we're describing.
I gotta be honest with you too, we've had an absolute blast working on all of these, and the same type of personality is crept in here. That's a beautiful thing about working with a crowd of friends here on Twitch. And by the way, everyone that's joining right now, good evening to you. Thank you for joining us. We're gonna have an absolute blast tonight. But yeah, Stephen, we just started going through these maps one by one, and I know that you and I didn't really talk about scope other than, I need a thorp, I need a hamlet, I need a village. But we just started getting carried away, So we know who lives in all of these buildings, and I know that that's not needed for the book. But it's like this little tiny thorp here is the basis for this little tiny hamlet here. Right down to, we know where the boatman is going to come into play on this. We've got this rock, by the way, this boulder is actually owned by one of our people who has joined the Twitch channel. That's actually Cave Geek's rock right there. That was his suggestion. Oh, we got a maypole. We got the stocks over here as well. And all of this was just coming from the channel. And we've been just doing that every single iteration. And so we got the little tannery over here. That was an idea that came from someone, and he's on the opposite side of the river because no one wants a tannery next to him. So it's like, get over there, Charlie. So every single... Yeah, exactly. So, and that of course means that they need a ferry now to get back and forth. So yeah, I'd like to think that we've been adding that little bit of charm, those little stories. We've got little Easter eggs in here. So even on something where it's a simple, this is a village, and here's the text about what a village is. We've just, I want to give you an illustration that's not just your run-of-the-mill, kind of like black and white. These are some rectangles. These are some shapes that represent trees. Done. I just wanted to go that extra length and maybe create something that could make a real kick-ass poster at the end of the day. You know, something I want on the wall.
Well, looking at what you've done, you have definitely done that. And just adding that whole personal touch to it is just pure awesome. I mean, I didn't know that you had done that. I mean, that's really cool because I feel like it needs written up now, not in the CKG, but maybe we do a supplement to it.
It's like... that would be actually kind of cool to do like a little supplement or something for this, you know. And then I think this is where I started to really loop you in when I've got this block tower, and the block came from someone in the channel. They were like, draw a block, and I was like, a what? Because I'd actually not heard of a block tower before now. And then someone else said, let's do a cutaway, and I was like, whoa. But then I was like, well, a tower from above is pretty boring. Like, that's really mega boring. I can't just hand a circle back to Stephen. He would go, well, yeah, duh. So this ended up being a really fun project too, doing that, which I think will inspire me to do a lot more of them. And then, of course, I was like, I'm not going to do any more cutaways. I'm not doing any more isometric. We're just not doing it. And here we are. And this project has grabbed me and just said, no, you'll do it more.
I gotta tell you, so the cutaway is my favorite piece of art of all time. I don't know, you know, you can talk all of these grandiose paintings or whatever, but I can sit and stare at a cutaway forever. And I think part of it, so to give everybody a view into my head, my dad was quite a good carpenter. He could do just about anything, and he could envision, you know, in what I used to say you could see in 3D. I can't see in 3D, so when I would help him do carpentry, he would be like, you know, you got to cut this angle, and I couldn't envision any of it. So I can't quite see that scope. So when you do a cutaway, I can actually see inside in the way the stairs go, and the way the tunnels go, and the way everything goes. So when I first saw that cutaway I think I saw on Facebook a month or so ago, whenever it was, I was just absolutely ecstatic. I mean, that was just awesome. I absolutely love that.
I'll tell you what, Stephen, so it was about, I want to say it was about a year ago, when you said to me, hey, will you draw me a town or a village or something, but I kind of want it like sort of elevated view, isometric on a hill, near a river or something. And I was like, that's a little bit more illustration than I typically do. So you went off and got obviously someone else. Now I think I would actually tackle it. I think I'm hooked on refining my skills on this type of thing. So thank you, Troll Lord Games, for that. You definitely raised the bar and you weren't even trying.
Wow. Oh my Lord, the Moat and Bailey next to it is fantastic. There's just something about it, that whole, I don't know, it brings it into view. I don't know, it just makes it so real. Even though it's an illustration, it doesn't matter. It makes it so very, very real. And it really will, I think, in a very practical level, help game masters, CKs, and players actually envision what's going on.
Yeah, I think definitely right. And as a game master myself, I've been wanting to create something that would help someone understand what is a Motte and Bailey. And this was another one. The more I thought about it, it was like, if I draw this from above, I mean, it's going to look like a figure eight, and one side of the eight's a bit smaller. And it's like, I'm not going to be able to understand truly what a Motte and Bailey is. So it's like, you know, screw it. Let's just try doing this thing from an elevated position. And I think it came out looking pretty good.
It looks fantastic. And I got to tell you, and you're spot on, and the Motte and Bailey is a perfect example, because I run a table now that's mostly teenagers from 14 to 19. And, you know, you and I come from a pretty stark history, I mean, pretty good history background. But even when we were kids, these things were kind of part of the popular culture. Well, they're not part of the popular culture so much anymore. other than through video games. And really in the video game, it's more of trying to accomplish a feat, or whatever, as opposed to learning about what the terrain actually is. So when I'm describing this stuff to these younger guys, this is a lot they don't know. So I have to pull illustrations up and, give it to them. And this is why this going into CKG will make the book even much better, much better. Because it's all there now. You have the visual.
I think that's a really, really, really fair point. It was at school I was actually taught about modern Beta castles. It was one of the only things, honestly, to do with English history that we were taught. But Motte and Bailey's was absolutely one of them. So I wanted to make sure that I got this right and really conveyed what they were about, because I think there's such a wonderful, in a way, simple structure. You understand why, early sort of fortifications started off this way. The Romans, obviously, to one side. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure we captured that,
Yeah, well, you definitely did that, and that's what it's a very simple and elegant fortification, and one which clearly worked, because you can still see the signs of them. But the world really, it's fascinating to me, younger people, as I've gotten older, the world has moved beyond things that were common in our youth. It's just moved beyond that, and it's not good or bad. It's just that's the way it is.
Yeah, it's different now. Yeah, and people do tend to think of it in terms of. Well, is that in a computer game? What computer game has that been in? Type of deal.
Yeah, I got the funniest comments. I get it from my kids when they say, one of us talked to me last night about old history, and he said something about 1984, and I said, "Oh, wait a minute, not old history yet."
It's like steady on. I was graduating school then. Come on, I was alive.
It's not ancient history. I did. It's taught me why the older people that are over 70, they just quit giving advice, because no one's going to listen to them anyways. They've lived so long at this point that they know the story. Just things change. You got to get over it and move on. That's just the way it is.
And you have to accept it. You have to grow with it, 100%. I will say this though. I mean, we were talking about this on last night's stream while coloring this map, and we were talking about rule systems that we actually learned a lot from. And Chivalry and Sorcery came up, the Game Master's Guide came up, and these, even though there's a game, we learned so much history from them, whether it be armor parts or castle pieces, and your book is definitely going to fall into that category.
It's one of the nice things about role-playing games. It's really cool to me, and I've run quite a few tables now with younger people. It's very, very cool to me how open they are to just all of this information. They just think it's great. I mean, they don't reject it at all or want to walk around it. They want more so that they can role-play the game, especially when they learn that, RPGs are a little bit, video games are great. I love them, but RPGs are a different context because you can kind of do anything you want, especially in a game like Castles and Crusades, where the siege engine kind of governs everything. And it's really you try it and fail or succeed. They really are open to all of this information. And like you said, I think one of the best informative game books I've ever had was Palladium's, Palladium's Arms and Armor. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a book by Palladium, a blue book. It was a fantastic book, just filled with illustrations of all types of weapons and armor and fortifications. And then it had the terminology that goes with it. And that's one of the things that we're trying to focus on here. I know in our own Arms and Armor book, and this is kind of geared for writers too, and we do this in the CKG to some degree. We have an Arms and Armor, I've got an illustration of an axe. And we actually have the words pointed to the various portions of the axe that describe this is the axe head, this is the axe handle, this is there's about 5 or 6 pieces to an axe. And the same thing with a sword and a crossbow, because that terminology is important for, mood and setting and conveying, whatever kind of descriptive text or whatever it is you're trying to convey, as well as writing. So I think things like the Castle Keeper's Guide are far more effective than we. I mean, they're just. We know they are. They're just very, very effective. And when you take really superior illustrations and put them in there, it just doubles it, triples it, makes effectiveness far better because now they can visualize the words that go with it.
Yeah, now people get it. Absolutely, 100%.
It's just easier, and I tell you, it's just really cool to me. There's these four young guys that are playing the table. Two of them don't read at all, a little bit, here and there. And I kept telling them, and I'm pushing them a little bit, not hard, but just try these books. If you don't start it, and if you don't like it, put it down and start another one, because they're not. I don't think they reject any kind of learning or any kind of learning anything new. They just don't want to be bored. Right. So when if you open up the Castle Keeper's Guide right now, in the section where your stuff is going to go, your illustration is going to go, is the chapter 6. It's the cities. It's a lot of text. There's like 10 pages of stuff describing cities and how many occupants and who the occupants are, and there's tables and there's charts. And that's all. That's good. The information is there. But now with illustrations in it, they're going to see the illustration. It's going to fire up the interest, and then they'll go read what, even more, get more detail out of the text, which is really what we wanted to do.
That would be actually really kind of cool. If my illustrations can in any way help someone be engaged with that section, then I'm going to consider that to be a real strong win. So,
I get
give
it.
us a sneak peek, so this project is clearly self-explanatory in many ways. Give me a hamlet, give me a thorp, give me a village, give me some military structures. How did a marching camp get into here? What are you going to say about this?
So when we conceived the book, the whole idea was what I tried to do when I laid out the table of contents for the book is to create a book that answered all the questions that players have asked me over the years. You're a game master. You know how it is. They ask you something, and you got to come up. There's got to be an answer. If they don't know what a Roman camp looks like, you got to either quickly go look it up, or of course you got the internet now. It helps a little bit. But that's the reasoning behind the CKG. We wanted all that information just piled on top of them so that they could go reference it, pull it, and see it. And the fortified camp, because Davis and I both, I think he wrote chapter 6, the city. Either he did or I did. I can't honestly remember who wrote this chapter. But we both come from a pretty strong background, and I'm much like you, I'm a huge fan of Rome. I absolutely love reading about Rome, watching anything about Rome. I eat it up all the time. And when we were looking at these fortifications and whatnot, what always cropped up in my head is the Roman army's ability to march. And what would they do? They'd stop at about 2 p.m. and build a fortified camp and then leave it the next day. And that's a pretty astounding thing to accomplish. It's, we think in modern terms that we have this kind of corner on doing these monolithic things, but our predecessors were actually extraordinarily capable.
They were incredibly extraordinary, and it's that part, honestly, that where I think I fell in love with the Romans. It's like, so you've got this massive tribe of 100,000 people approaching Rome because they want to cut through Rome's land to get somewhere else, and Caesar's there, and he's like, come back in a few days and let's talk about this. And in the intervening time, built this massive moat, this massive canal from miles over there to miles over there, and it's like, wait, he did what? And it's just like like nothing was an obstacle to them. And it's like, the more you read into their engineering, I defy anyone just to be amazed by it.
Oh yeah, it's the two things that crop up in my mind all the time: the ramp that they built to the Masada, to the castle.
Oh yes.
I can't remember if the castle's Masada or the mountain's Masada, but that ramp was astounding. And then Caesar's bridging the Rhine River in 3 days? I think it was.
Just to show off too.
Yeah, I know. He just crossed the river and then he came home and burned the bridge.
To make a point, you're not safe. You're not safe.
It's absolutely astounding, and it's one of those. It's those things that I think that, especially in this modern era, as we've moved, and I'm not criticizing society or whatever. It is what it is. But we've kind of moved away from teaching certain important things in history, what I find important in history, to other stuff, that a lot of this stuff is kind of being left behind. For good or ill, whatever, you can make whatever argument you want, but it's one of the reasons I wanted it in the CKG, and that is precisely where the Roman encampment came from, because I wanted that, the idea that we like to look at, my brother says this, he says this all the time. He comes from David Chenault, co-founded Troll Lord Games with me, and Matt Golan, and he co-wrote the co-created the Castles and Crusades game. But he comes from, I come from a strong history background. He comes from a strong anthropological background. And it drives him absolutely crazy when people in today's world look at people from 1000 or 500 or 500 BC or whatever time period, and we think that they're somehow not quite intelligent or not quite as refined or not quite capable. And it's absolutely insane to even have that thought. They're the exact same people we are. So what we really wanted to do in this section specifically is let people really bring home what these people's accomplishments were, so that you can look at it with less of a jaded, and it's easy. It's very common for us all to look, 40 years ago is the time of the dinosaurs or whatever it is. But really, their accomplishments are astounding, and this stuff should play over into your game. And if you embrace it enough, it will play over into your game. So that's hopefully what that section kind of gets across to people.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And yeah, so King Kothar, yeah, he would. I'm not going to say that word on channel, but yeah, you could definitely judge the guy by his actions and his motivations. I'm not going to deny that. But the Roman people as a whole, Masada, I'm going to use Stephen's, example of, like, you're looking up at this fortification up there. And, I mean, it is a fortification on the hill of all hills. And only the Romans would sit there and go, all right, build a ramp. I mean, like, no one else would do that. Like, no one. And that, I love that. Well, I think it was Caesar's siege of Pompeii, when Pompey was trying to escape, before the civil war between two of them. And, like, I forget the city's name now where Pompey was at, but it was a coast city. And so how do you besiege a coastal city? Well, the Romans built a whole bunch of floating platforms around the harbour and put towers on the floating platforms. And it's like, hold on, we wouldn't even think like that nowadays, And it's just, I find that to be enthralling. Yeah,
no, it's absolutely astounding. I remember reading a few years back about a Roman bath and how they had a room underneath it that had furnace, that pipes went up underneath and ran along the floor, and on every other flagstone was a piece of copper or brass, probably copper, so that it would heat the room above. And it was just, you're reading this stuff and you're thinking they had the same creature comforts that we do now, and their engineering was just astounding, and they were
working with different technologies, but their intellectual level was up there,
Yeah, it's no different. They just didn't have electricity, and sometimes maybe.
Nero's barge, yeah, there's another good example. I mean, this was just a race of people that just nothing was impossible to them.
It wasn't. The roads, all of it. I mean, it just goes, and you can tell because much of the empire, whatever, the republic remains. I mean, there's chunks of it all over the place, all over Europe. Fortifications, roads, Colosseum still stands. I mean, I think it would still be in fair shape if the earthquake had knocked half of it down. So it's pretty astounding. Hadrian's Wall. I mean, of course, now that's mostly been removed, I guess, and put into farmers' houses and out barns and out walls and whatnot.
How much does the historian in you cringe? You realize that it's an inevitability. I heard the same with the Colosseum too. Like, over the centuries and centuries, like, part of that Colosseum's missing because people took the rock and built things with it. And I'm sitting here going, no. And I know it's an inevitability, but I'm like, why did you have to do that?
Yeah, you would like at a certain point for someone to say, you know what, this is such an amazing thing that I'm not going to dismantle it. But on the other hand, if you're a farmer in Scotland and you're trying to build a house and there's all that stone just sitting there,
miles and miles of it too. Of course you're going to take the rock. Of course you are.
No one's using it, so. Yeah, I don't know. It does bother me a little bit. It's funny talking to Davis about this stuff too, because as an archaeologist, when he did about 15, 17 years, he was doing digs out west and in Arkansas and Missouri and Oklahoma, but he he would frequently be going through, and what he would say, and I'm probably going to mess this up, but he would say, I'm really just sorting through people's trash, stuff that they threw out, and it just got buried or half burnt and was buried over time, and there it is. So he's got this kind of different take on.
There's a hard truth to that, though. I mean, look at Vindolanda over at Hadrian's Wall. I mean, everything that they're getting out of that is pretty much from the refuge ditches, that the Romans had. And they're pulling up single shoes and things like that. And they're like, oh, look, we have this shoe and it's perfectly intact. It was someone's trash. It's like, oh, one shoe, gone.
I can't find the other one. I'm throwing this away. Yeah, they were just like we are. They lost their slippers just like we do. Oh yeah, so Willie the Rat has he's quoted from the Life of Brian. All right, but apart from the sanitation, medicine, education, wine, public order, irrigation, roads, the freshwater system, and public health, what have the Romans ever done for us?
Exactly.
That movie is absolutely fantastic. It's one of my favorite movies.
I had to rewatch that recently because I feel like when I first watched it, it was kind of lost on me, but it is comic genius.
It really is. It is. From opening to close, it is just absolutely fantastic. It's a little irrelevant, not irrelevant, a little irreverent, but that's okay. I'm okay with that type of humor. Just good stuff. Just good stuff. Yeah, but these illustrations you're doing, Elisa, are just fantastic. I mean, this is more than I could have dreamed for that would be going into this book.
Well, that's appreciated. I came to a realization, I want to say a couple of years ago, that, there's a lot of awesome cartographers out there. Really, truly great, very talented cartographers. What is the thing that I try to bring to the table? Well, I tried to draw a map that actually you would print on a piece of canvas and stick to your wall. I tried to draw something where, as GMs and players alike, we look at it and go, ooh, I want that pull-in factor, I want you to see things in my maps years later. Like, wait a minute, what is this? I want that. Someone mentioned Whisper and Venom earlier in the chat. I think Treeball, it was Treeball. And the Whisper and Venom was a prime example. The actual client for that, Zach Glazon, now with Frog God Games, contacted me years later and said, did you mean to draw this in the hills? I was like, yep. And it taken him that long to notice it. And that's what I like to do. So, if the trolls, and I've got to be honest with you, I love the trolls a huge amount. If they contact me and say, we want you to do 12 maps, and I'm going to do 12 maps that way. I'm going to draw the little oars in the boat. I mean, you may not see it on the page, but if this ever made it into a poster, you will. And so I like to draw that level of detail, just regardless, right down to the little graveyard here, And so, Stephen, if you ask me to do a map for you, I'm always going to do that. That's the thing I do. Stupid detail.
That is beyond appreciated. I mean, that is just pure awesome. I noticed the little sheep before. That's just really, really cool.
The little sheep?
The little sheep in the first picture.
Oh, yes. Yes. And I kind of want to bring some sheep over to this one, but they'll be even smaller. And I actually do want to do some smokestacks sort of drifting off as well. Obviously, about that scale, we're going to stop seeing it. So I'll probably stop being stupid on that. But
there'll be a little white dot there.
Exactly. But actually, did you notice that I actually do have my legions lined up on this one?
Oh, on the The Roman camp?
Talking about dots.
Oh, no, I hadn't looked. Oh. That is beautiful. That is absolutely awesome.
I have them down to the cohort, to the Legion, and I have them marching out over here as well on this side.
Do I see tribunes in front of them?
Yep, of course. And the auxiliary cavalry heading off ahead.
That is just beyond cool.
And I think this is only a half-page map, so I mean, I think print size is probably something like this. But even at that, you see the little insinuation of dots in there, and I think it gives it that little bit of life, and that's what I want to do, you know?
Well, it also adds a level of, it certainly does that, but it adds a level of accuracy to it that brings the whole thing home. I mean, you've got to realize when you're looking at this map of this Roman encampment, people lived there. You know, that's their homes. Those tents were their homes, and they were partially permanent structures when they didn't move their camps. So it's cool to see things like that. And the overview is perfect because you get an idea of how orderly and organized the Romans were, which played no small part in their world conquest or European conquest.
Well, and you know, I had to try and capture this one correctly. I mean, I'm never going to live it down if I get this one wrong.
That's right. I saw your post. Someone posted it. I think you posted it on Facebook, where it shows a picture of a text and it has what's so great about the Romans, and then the text that is a response is this gigantic.
Well, let me tell you what's great about the Romans. You got a few hours?
I just fell over laughing.
And yeah, Ultra Magnus. I have not actually spoke to Stephen formally on this. Obviously, this is 12 maps. The trolls will be using this individually, as Stephen's indicated throughout the text, but I've drawn them all on one canvas, and I'll supply them individually, of course, but I've drawn them on one canvas because of two reasons. A, super sexy, and I really wanted to see if I could push my new computer to the limit, and so far it's keeping up. I thought it would look pretty spiff, but also when we started to do it, I started to realize, we'll give this a coloured background, give it a title, the Castle Keeper's Guide and things. This would actually make a cool poster, to the point where I would even plug the remaining gap there. This would be a real neat poster. It's the type of thing I would want this on my wall, on my gaming room,
I think that's a brilliant idea. That's wonderful. I'm glad you're doing that. I mean, that is really, really cool. Yeah, this whole thing, I was thinking individual small, but that would be even better as one large poster. And you and I talked the other day, TLG is in the process of moving a mountain of art over to Noble Dwarf. I think I got all of it to him except the Castle Keeper's Guides cover. To start doing the merchandising side of stuff and this would be beautiful on one of their canvases. Absolutely beautiful.
By the way, that I think is a little bit of an exclusive for the people that join my chat on a regular basis, because I'm on Noble Dwarf. Troll Lords are going to be on Noble Dwarf as well.
Oh yeah, we haven't announced that. That is an exclusive.
Shh, don't tell anyone.
Quite. So is that Trebor? Hello, Trebor. How's it going, man? I haven't talked to you in a while. I'm trying to keep up with the chat here a little bit. Yeah, this is just going to make a fantastic poster. This is cool. I don't know. It's very interesting having gamed for, forever and a day. I guess I started in like 76, 77, something like that. And you start not only as a game master, but as a player, you start wanting some kind of flesh to the bones of your game, to know what things look like or how they're actually organized or how they actually worked. One of the things that I talk about but frequently on my Discord, we've Troll Lords on Discord now, and I've got a private, not private, but I got a personal channel where I just jibber jabber about whatever. But history is frequently the conversation, and I talk about it a lot on the Twitch channel too, because I think a lot of people just they want the context. They already have some context, of course, but they want to know other stuff. They want to have more context to it and just flesh to everything. And books like the Castle Keeper's Guide are specifically designed for that. And these illustrations a perfect way to just bring it all to life. So it's just interesting looking at. I remember way back when, back in the late 70s, I used the Ardu and Gomorrah books probably as much as I used the AD&D books, because there was so much stuff just jammed into those little bitty brown books that you could. It's like one of your pieces of art. You could go back to it and find more stuff every time you look at it. And then we went through a long period, I think, of just kind of heavy on mechanics and heavy on rules and making the game a little bit more, not war gamey, but just controlled, I suppose. And it's nice to see the evolution continue as we just bring more information to the table. And I think that you've got 2 generations of people now, what I guess are called the millennials, and the Zoomers, whatever they're called, whatever the youngsters are called.
Zoomers? They're called Zoomers? I didn't know that.
That's what I call them. I don't know if I got that on the net or I did it to irritate. My youngest son, he's born in, when was he born? 2006, I think. So he's 14 or something, 15. And he's constantly calling me a boomer. Well, now that fad's kind of passed, and I would explain to him. It was the funniest conversation I've had. I said, now you do know that I'm technically not a boomer. A boomer's blah, blah, blah. I'm Generation X, blah, blah, blah. And he looked at me and he goes, that's exactly what a boomer would say.
Oh, God. All right.
It was hilarious. It's when I can't win, so I quit. But so these younger people coming up that are now in their teens or whatnot, I think they're hungry for this information. I don't think a lot of it is regularly taught at school as they've shifted the curriculum to whatever direction they've shifted it. So I think they're hungry for it. I think they're hungry to know how people lived not so long ago. I remember when I was down at a funeral last year, and you can go down in Drew County, Arkansas, and you can drive down one of the main roads, and you can look, and off of the road you can see this. Now it's fading, it's very little left, but the wagon tracks are still there. And I know they're wagon tracks because my grandmother told me when she was young in the 1920s, that's how she got to and from town, from their house to town. And so it's not that far that we're removed from these things. It's just a few decades. So I think people, especially younger people, are hungry to know what came before. They're hungry to know that everything isn't just whatever 25 seconds on the internet, whatever we do now to get whatever, phrase or meme across or what have you. There's context. And I think like any human, they're hungry for the context that comes before and comes after. Let's see, the Dungeon Tomb. Hello, all can only be here a short time. Well, hello, Dungeon Tomb.
Dungeon Tomb is, he's gonna hate me because I keep forgetting. But he's over in Holland or Norway or something. So it's 3:00 in the morning over there right now.
Oh, so it's really early over there.
Oh yeah, super early.
Yeah. Yeah, I cannot get the time. I just can't get the times down in my head. I'm just going to quit. I can't figure out what time it is here, much less anywhere else. I see. Speaking of the Romans, Steve, did you ever read of Tros of Samothrace? It's a book by Talbot Mundy, and it was famous in the early 20th century for its criticism of the Romans and especially Caesar. It focuses on the invasion of what would eventually become the UK. That's interesting. I have not read that. Is it a history book, or is it a... I read a lot of history. For those who don't know, when I started Troller Games, I was actually working my PhD in history. And I kind of quit that, and as TLG picked up and started rolling. So I've got a pretty strong background in history, and I'm pretty stringent on the history books I read. Can't be written by a journalist, and it's got to have a really stout bibliography, and the historian's got to get to a point. I don't want it just kind of rehashing other historians' theories or whatnot. So I'm pretty judgmental on the games. I'm like, oh, that was cool or whatever. I rarely criticize a game, if ever. But the history, I'll criticize pretty good. So it's fiction. No, I probably haven't. I don't read too much historical fiction. Honestly, can't think of anything that I have read historical fiction-wise.
I've been trying to work on the Sword of Rome type of stuff. I've been actually audiobooks reading a little bit of historical fiction, and it hasn't been bad. It's the only way that you'll get me into a fiction book nowadays, you know.
Yeah. It's mostly what I read is history, and I bounce all over the place. I was reading some Spartan history not too long ago, but historical fiction. Yeah, I don't know. I'll probably dabble in it at some point. I gotta say, I found an old copy of The Hobbit in a trunk of mine that I was cleaning out about 3 months ago or so. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to read this because I was up at Davis's farm, and so I sat down and read it. And now of course, I read The Hobbit, and I dove into the Fellowship and then the Two Towers, and now I'm into the Return of the King.
Well, that was one way of getting sucked in.
Yeah, I know. I know it's Tolkien, and it's been so many years since I've read it. And I'm a huge Tolkien fan. Absolutely love Tolkien. And again, you know, talking about history, part of the reason I like Tolkien so much is both in the trilogy, a little bit in The Hobbit, but definitely in the appendixes. There's so much history woven into the story, so much history of Middle Earth, Valinor, and all of that. And of course, I'm a huge fan of Silmarillion, but it's that type of stuff that actually engages me. So even when I leave reading history, I don't go too far. So maybe historical fiction would be something for me to dive into. I may enjoy it more than I realize. Boomer and Zoomer are a mindset, not an age. There you go. Yeah, King, I'm going to be honest with you. I really don't put much credence into any of this generational goobly-goop that they've been talking about for decades. There's knuckleheads in every generation. There's lazy people. There's innovative people. There's just whatever. We're just people. That's just all there is to it. I've read way too much history to realize that we're special in any way, shape, or form. I see. Go to Fordham University online source books for primary sources history, including ancient. Interesting. I still can't read online very much. I can barely read the PDFs that TLG does. I'll frequently print them off, and of course we have our own print shop, so that helps immensely. I'll print them off and sit down and read it. Having read the Anti News, I can tell you you're a fan. So yeah. So what he's talking about there, Elisa. So the companion book to the Castle Keeper's Guide is the Codex of Air. The Codex of Air is our world setting, and it's a similarly sized 280-page book that plunges into the world of Air, and it's got the first 120 pages of it. It's about 250,000 words. Now, about 120 pages of it is just the history of Air. That's all.
Oh my word!
Oh yeah, it is. It begins in the beginning when the All-Father came upon the void and began creating all the way down to the present time, with tales and names and all kinds of stuff. It's my baby. I created it, but the Andanuth is the name of that part of the Codex of Air. It's the tale of the world of Air. So it's very inspired by the Silmarillion and historically, cast. So it's a little bit dry at times. It's a history. How's it going, Last Laugh? So print off the books at Fordham. It sounds like a lot of work, Trebor. I'm a, what do they call it? A book snob. I rarely read paperback books. I read hardcover books. And even if they're slightly oversized, I won't read them. I've got to be able to hold them comfortably, especially if it's like a 400-page book. It can't be some weird size. It won't fit in a bookshelf. I'm a bit of a book snob. There's no doubt about it. I've got a pretty extensive library. I don't know, about 4,000 books, 4,500 books, something like that. But I won't be printing anything off the internet. That's just not the way I can do it.
So answer a question that came up last night, and I think it was Trebor and I that were talking about it, funny enough. Do you do all of your printing here in the United States?
Yes.
We print.
Yeah, most everything that's soft cover is printed in our own shop. We'll outsource a little bit of the soft cover stuff. If it's got a complicated spine or something like that, I might outsource it. Or weird paper sizes. We're having a lot of trouble with 5x5 by 8x5. None of the settings work, so we're really struggling with that. So I might end up outsourcing some of the fiction that I read.
So you're not here only here in the United States, but you are also in-house for the most part.
Yes. Well, if it's soft cover, it's in-house. We've got our own print shop. Either me, Mark, or Todd, or Davis. Occasionally Tim are in there printing, binding, cutting the books. And if it's a hardcover book, those are printed in Missouri, up in Walsworth. I've been with them for about 15 years. They are an absolutely fantastic print facility. And then we do boxes, game boxes, and those are printed, I believe, in Pennsylvania. So I don't like to offshore stuff. There's lots of reasons for that. I can go into that if you want, but it gets complicated with the shipping and customs and just there's a bunch of reasons for it. But primarily I like to support local. I'm a huge fan of get it locally if you can, and then in your state if you can't, and then in your region if you can't, and then in your country if you can't. We have printed in Canada before. I love printing up in Canada, but you just got to make sure your measurements from American Standard to a metric come out correctly. That could be, tricky if you're not paying attention to your price quotes. I've been down that road. So
I was going to say, did you fall foul of that?
Oh yeah, it was one of the Gygax books. I think it was Living Fantasy. That was the third Gary Gygax books. We were doing Quebecois, I think is who we did two. We had 3 Canadian printers in the early days. Print and Litho, Quebecois, and Transcon. I think it was one of those. It's Book of Names. It was the Book of Names. One of the printings of the Book of Names turned out kind of just a little off. But beyond that, that was in the early days. Since then, we have printed everything in the United States. It's just a lot easier, all the way around. I think we're actually the only publishing company left in our industry who prints solely in the United States. I think everybody else offshore.
I was going to say, that has to be really, really rare.
Yeah, I don't know anyone. There were a couple, but they've since moved offshore. So I think we're the last ones left. And so long as I'm sitting in a chair, it's not going to change. So, and the nice thing is, we factor all of this stuff in. It costs a little bit more. There's no doubt about that. Having said that, the whole tariff war that sprang up in the last couple of years, it hit some of the other publishers pretty hard. But I don't know why I just completely lost my train of thought on that.
Well, and it's got to be paying dividends now. Obviously we're in a COVID world. Not to bring it up, but it's a reality. And you're not going to be affected by any of the whole imports or the
we've already seen
imports, the shipping,
right. All of the delays in shipping. Every one of our, I don't like to call them competitors, but a lot of the other companies have had lots of troubles, and we've not had any of that. And no increased tariffs, nothing hung up in customs, nothing stopped, slowed down, whatever. There hasn't been any of that. So. It's been, and it's interesting too, because when I made this major, and I should say, I don't mind using Canada. It's right here in this neck of the woods. They're really are very, very good neighbors. I love Canada. I love Mexico. We're just good neighbors over here. We squabble occasionally, but that's what neighbors do. That's all right. But so I don't mind using Canada and whatnot. I prefer to use the United States. Over Canada simply because of customs and stuff like that, because it's pretty small to get things across the border. But once I'd made the full commitment to stay here, I check periodically with the printers to make certain where they're getting their paper, because I found out some years ago, it's very odd, and it's environmental law. So there's much more strict environmental laws in the United States than there are in China. And what this one paper company was doing, they would manufacture the paper here in the United States, load it on trucks, send it to a train, send it to a ship, send it across the sea, have it coated with whatever, not the UV coating, but I guess it's UV coating, and then have it shipped all the way back, and then they would deliver it to us, because the environmental laws over there were easier, and they could do, they could spray it or whatever they're doing. And I thought, well, that's kind of defeating the whole purpose of protecting the environment, whatever your motivation is. So it was like, I got to start checking on where they're getting the paper. So I make certain when we order paper that it's manufactured in the United States, or when we use, I'll call Walsworth and make sure all of the paper that's going into our books is manufactured in the United States. So when you're holding one of our books, it's definitely it's U.S. Now we will once in a blue moon have paper when there's no paper to be found. We will have it shipped from. Our backup comes from Germany, and bizarrely, it's pulped in Germany and made into paper in Finland and shipped from Finland. It's just very strange. The whole thing, the whole process.
Yeah, that's been all over the world at this point.
It just gets crazy. But yeah, we try to have everything from the United States. Yeah, Willie, I absolutely love Canada. I've been there quite a few times. My absolutely favorite Canadian story. Tim and I were up there bebopping around. Tim Burns, he's our communications director. And we drove up. We were in Quebec City, I think, maybe Montreal. I can't remember now. We drove, parked the car, and we're walking. There was snow on the ground, and there's a castle, maybe some kind of fortification. It's been so many years. And we walked through this gate and into this courtyard. There's a few cars parked around, and these two Canadian soldiers walked up to us, and they had, combat gear on and some kind of firearm, and both of them were like, "You can't be here. This is a secure area." And I thought, well, we just walk in here. Not sure how secure your area is, but I love you, Canada. They were so very polite too. They were very, very cool because it could have gone very, very, very differently. But yeah, Canada's a great country. If you've never been, you should go. The people are crazy friendly. It's just a good place to be. So it's Quebec. I think it was. I have to ask Tim. It was cold. I remember that. There was snow, and we had to buy. I still got it around here. I bought a little a hat. What's the thing on top of the hat? Is that a beanie? The thing that goes a little. I don't know. I'm from Arkansas. We don't get snow down here, so we don't wear hats very often. They've got some cool forts up there too. Yeah, I guess I need to stomp around Canada more, definitely. They said sorry. It was really cool. They were so polite. Yeah, they're not that polite if you wander onto an American military institution.
I bet they're not.
No, they're not. Not at all. Instead of the customary music selection, we have the live juke Chenault. Yeah. There you go. Speaking of which, I'm gonna get a Dr. Pepper. Right here in my. Lord have mercy. This is just amazing. Watching you do this is just astounding. It's really cool to watch it, the color springing up.
It transforms the map, doesn't it? It really does. I'm going to leave that castle until last, I think. I'm going to hit the town, fortified town, city, metropolis. But I don't want it to be like 60 hours coloring each one. I want to kind of bust these out pretty quick. So I'm kind of doing a slightly different approach, which I think is still going to make them pop up here. Because normally I would color each individual building and each individual rooftop, and you just don't need that. You just don't need that. That'd be kind of demented.
You're getting kind of this is a broader view, so it might be all right to have a few.
Right, exactly. I'm going to make the details pop. They're going to look absolutely beautiful, but you also need this map. And if I'm still working on it in 2022, our friendship, I think, might fracture at some point.
Yeah, we have moved into the layout section, so we've kind of got ourselves a little bit of a conundrum. There was a lot of requests on the player's handbook. So we did this Castle Keeper's Guide Kickstarter, I don't know, 8 months ago or 6 months ago, whatever it was. And that's when we started working on, you and I started working together on this. And I say we because I'm not doing any of this. No,
it counts. It counts.
This is all you. But anyway, so when we did the player's handbook Kickstarter, there was a lot of requests from a lot of people to change the layout somewhat. Not so much where everything is, but to go. What we got right now are kind of tan, yellowish pages that look like tea-stained pages, that type of stuff, to give the color the book a little pop. But it's a little distracting when you're trying to actually read, and the CG in particular. But even the player's handbook has a lot of information in it. There's a lot of content jammed in there. So anything that kind of takes away from that, ease of reading's got to go. So we're tossing out the background entirely, going with a white page, and that impacted the CKG because we'd already started laying it out. But since the 3 core books of Castles and Crusades are the Player's Handbook, the Monsters and Treasures, and the CKG, they need to look alike. So I told Peter, just dump what you've got on the CKG and let's just start over. So now we're kind of retooling, but we're just now getting back into the layout part of the CKG. We'll get the text laid out, and then we'll start looking for illustrations. But you should be well on. I mean, you've got some of these just almost all done.
We're really very close on this now. Funny enough, it was last night's stream, someone was sort of saying, I'm back on one of these, hey, you should draw this, you should draw this, you should draw this, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure the trolls need this off me. You know, they're going to be chomping at this. We could draw one thing forever. Oh yeah, but just have some people walking around, you know, with buckets of flowers or whatever it was. I'm like, time out. Close enough. Close enough. Let's move on.
Yeah, you could certainly go for, especially pictures like this. I mean, there's so much life that goes into a city and so much stuff that people don't even think about. So from your angle, you could do this for a long time.
Could do it for a long time. Exactly.
So which is the metropolis? I'm very curious. This is the one.
That's this one down here. And I have like coloring in the background of it right now, kind of this, but it's here.
Okay, wow, holy Christmas. That is amazing.
There's a lot of buildings in that.
Now, you know what's going to happen when David sees this stuff, he's going to start writing all this stuff up. So, if you've got some stuff, you know, preconceived, let us know, because I guarantee you David's going to get fired up.
Well, he and I can absolutely talk on this, because, yeah, I mean, if there's any writing needed on it and I have any ideas, I will let you know. That's not a problem at all.
Just amazing stuff. It's funny. It's funny, too, how maps can fire the imagination easily as much as a good picture. You know, I don't know what it is. And maybe it's just me. I don't think so. Everyone seems to love maps.
No, you're 100% right. In fact, that's one thing that I always say when we said it in Gax more, actually, you know, because I won't just draw a block of trees as a forest and walk away. What a lost opportunity. Put some little paths going through. Put a little hut right in the middle of a clearing. You don't need to say what it is. As a cartographer, I've just sowed a little seed. I've got players going, what's that? I've got GMs going, ooh, what's that? And that, I think, as long as you don't lose that opportunity as a cartographer, you've got great chances to throw seeds and inspire the imagination. 100%. I mean, this is one reason why even this sort of top down of the Martin Bailey, I've got a little signpost. Why they would need a signpost in a place with less than 20 buildings, I don't know. We got our little cattle and everything there. I tried to give the building some personality. Just to get the imagination going. Who's living there? What is their occupation? What are they doing?
Well, it's things like that signpost that make it real. Suddenly, you're not just looking at an illustration, but you're looking at where someone lives.
Right.
And that's a huge difference for just anyone's, you know, active imagination.
No magic casting on pain of death, says DM Samuel. There you go. There you go.
I always am looking for choke points in the road, ways to the Thieves Guild. Have good points to ambush folk. There you go. Hey, they did. I ran the game Sunday. I ran a game Sunday for those young guys, and they were being pursued by hobgoblins, and they went into a valley. And Pete, one of them, specifically looked for a choke point, so that
nice.
they could hammer the hobgoblins. The hobgoblins were in heavy armor, so couldn't climb the sides of the valley very well. And they ended up slaughtering those hobgoblins. It was kind of cool. They kind of fought Roman style. You know, I've never actually envisioned this. The movie, the show Rome did it pretty good. How did the Romans do it? So they had the first line would fall back and the second line would step forward, right? They would rotate out of combat so they could keep someone fresh all the time. And it's that switch that's always kind of fascinated me how they did that. But they did it in Sunday night's game. They created a choke point and kept rotating fighters, players in and out to keep the battle going.
That's so smart. I love it when players are really smart and they come up with a great plan. I run a lot of Call of Cthulhu or Cthulhu Invictus, and it's like, everyone's like, oh, Cthulhu, everyone should be dead by the end of the session. And I'm like, yeah, but if the players are smart and they think it through, I'm not going to purposely kill them. If they figure out what's going on, they manage to avoid the big bad or handle it in a certain way. As a GM, I personally sit there just like applauding it. I love it when players are smart.
I'm the exact same way, and I like it. I like to be surprised.
Yeah,
I like it. They come up with innovative things that I hadn't anticipated. It's one of those things I talk about a lot. We do the GM's Tricks of the Trade on Thursdays, and I talk about it a lot. It's easy for GMs to forget how difficult sometimes it is to be a player, because you're fed this X amount of information, you're interpreting it, this way, and it might not be completely accurate, and your life is on the line. You've got to make a decision that's going to either kill your character or not. And as GMs, we're like, why don't they? It's so obvious. Why can't they see this? It's not obvious on that other side of the screen. It can be kind of nerve-wracking. So I like it when they do things that are innovative and they do things that are just that I don't expect, because then that puts that same thing on me. Now I've got to react to something that I didn't expect. I've got to take this information and deal with it. It's a nice give and take. I'm a huge fan of, absolutely huge fan of players being aggressively innovative at the table.
For me as a GM, part of my reward is I don't know where this story is going to go. I don't know where this encounter is going to go. I don't know where this evening is going to go. So when the players do something that kind of catches me off guard or is innovative in some way, I love that. I mean, because now I'm along for the ride, it's like I'm a participant too. So I that's where I get my reward.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect way of saying it too. And it's interesting because I was talking to someone not too long ago, and the Codex of Air, the world setting I was talking about earlier, it was actually created at the gaming table. Now, a lot of it, the writing and the mythological creations I did, and the stories I created, but there's a whole swath of that comes from my table, and the stories that I created were written and built because of the table. So the 20-year game that we played that we call the big game, fed that codex and helped create it in no small way. And it's like you said, when the characters go, when the players go in this direction, suddenly the story that you had laid out has changed. You've gone down a different road, and that's cool. That's as cool as the road that you were going on. A new tale is being created that perhaps you weren't completely in charge of, and that's good. That's a very good thing. It's cool watching those roads materialize.
Oh, wait till I break out the little flagstone bush. You're just going to be amazed at this. I don't think you've seen my little flagstone bush. It is maybe the best bush I've got.
It's funny watching you do this. This is just awesome. I remember, Peter Bradley's worked with us for years and years and years. And I remember watching him. It was the strangest thing. He was working, I guess, a stylus. Is that what it's called?
Yes. Yeah.
And he was looking at his monitor, but his hand was on the stylus drawing, and I have no idea how his brain does that. He looks away from what he's... Is that what you're doing? Are you looking at the monitor?
Actually, I'm looking at my monitor, so because I'm traditionally ink on paper, I like drawing on what I'm literally drawing on. And so if I'm going to tip this up just for a moment, this is a Cintiq 24-inch HD Touch. It's by Wacom. And it's basically a big monitor. I can game on it and everything. It's a regular monitor, but it will lie flat. I can clip it down to any angle. And it's a touch monitor, so I can draw on it. So I don't get that disconnect, so where I'm drawing over here and it's appearing over there. I've done that. I've tried that when I was actually, my monitor broke one day or something. And Stephen, it breaks my brain. Like, it really breaks my brain. I struggle with that.
There's no way. Yeah, it's funny. It's been years. I learned professional typing long ago, and I don't think anyone can see it, but my desk here is an old 1950s desk, and it's actually got the typing tray on it where you would pull out and you put your whatever you're typing, up on the stand, and then you type it. You'd never look at your typewriter. So I guess that's sort of the same thing, but yeah, it breaks. It's a good way to put it. It breaks my brain. I can't. It's just too much. Let's see, Steve, do you remember where Aird first materialized? I'm assuming it started with the home game, but do you recall how the game began? Yeah, actually, so Aird's genesis, and this is, not very many people know this, but Aird's genesis is in Greyhawk. So we began the big game in Greyhawk, and we did that for years, maybe 5 or 6 years, and then I joined the Army and left. And when I was in the Army, when I joined the Army, we really didn't. I joined during the first Gulf War, and none of us really knew what was going to happen next. So we ended the game. We just kind of wrapped the game up. Characters went this way or that way or whatever. And then we, whatever. So once I got deployed and stationed and all of that business, I began writing, and I wrote a book called The Voiceless Song, I think, which was essentially this. I created this environment in which this. I won't go into all of that mess, but that's where the genesis of Unclar comes from. And then I began creating this world kind of based off of that. And then I began writing everybody letters when I had getting out of the Army date, whatever that is. I began writing all the players' letters about what their characters were doing and how the world had reshaped. Because when we closed it down, that's when Unclar came to the world and was conquering the world. So I advanced time 1,000 years, completely changed everything, drew my own continents, everything was just completely different. It fit in the context of the game because Unclar had been ruling for 1,000 years and had changed the shape of the world and all this other craziness. So we picked it up seamlessly when I got out of the Army. They were like 12th or 15th level or something like that. And then it became the Winter Dark Wars, which is their attempt to drive Unclar off of the planet. And then, what you have at that point is just scratch notes all over the place, and this kind of core novel that I had written. I still got that thing somewhere around here. But then I began fleshing things out, as we were talking earlier. Liz and I were talking earlier. When you play, you begin building things around this story. You need these towns or this whatever. Political structures, all kinds of stuff started coming into play. And that always is huge in my games. And then it just evolved. Then Troll Lord Games starts in the year 2000, right in the middle of all of that. And I wrote up, and we essentially we were printing with printing, print, and litho. And we had 3 books that we were going to send them, and they were going to give us a discount if we had a 4th. So I sat down and wrote, about 10,000 words, about 20,000 words I got one here for the After Winter Dark. So the After Winter Dark fantasy campaign setting, which is the first published version of the world of Air. And in that, I kind of created this folio that was inspired by the TSR folio that came out in 81 or 79 or 80 or something like that. So I had all of this information on countries, background, and everything. And that sold like gangbusters in the early D20 days. So as we began working with Gary Gygax, we began expanding the Codex of Air and taking all of my notes and all of the mythology and all of the stuff that I had written up from the book, all of it, and kind of bundling it to one gigantic book. And then when we redid it in 2015, we brought even more, because at this point, rarely does a week go by that I'm not creating more for the world of Air, and this spills into what we're publishing. Right now, you can find a lot of it on World Anvil. As I write new stuff, it goes on we upload it to World Anvil, and then these small expansion books that I've got. But so they still have those characters. They're 26th, 27th level or some such business, and still weaving in and out of the world of Air. So it's been a long, pretty cool story from beginning to end, and it's left. I'm a huge Greyhawk fan. It's left with this really nice foundation, both in the creation of and in the publication of, because we worked with Gary for so many years. it's just this nice whole simpatico or symbiotic, whatever you want to call it. And you throw into that my insane love of the Silmarillion. It's my favorite fantasy novel of all times. I absolutely love the Silmarillion, and a huge amount of just the structure and writing and the desire to have tales from the ancient world sprinkled throughout is directly an homage to J.R.R. Tolkien, who created, to me, just an amazing livable world. So there's all kinds of influences that came into Air, but yeah, it's been an interesting and long journey. I should pull that novel out at some point, see if it's any good. It's written a long time ago. So let's see, Steve, didn't you learn to type on a 1911 Lincoln typewriter? Just about. You know, I've got a couple of really old typewriters. I got to tell you, so I got my grandmother's typewriter. So she was born in 21 or 26. I think it's 21. And she served with the Army War Department during World War II and all kinds of mess. On one of those old metal typewriters that you've got to push those keys down, she could type like 68 words a minute with no errors. I can only imagine what she could do on a keyboard now. Those things are hard to push those buttons down.
That's what I learned on. It was one of those old keyboards. I actually got it from my great granddad when I was young, and it was like this deep, and it weighed so much. And I remember my mom and dad moved to Scotland for a while. And like that's the other side of the earth if you're in Britain, by the way. Just anywhere that's more than an hour is the other side of the earth. And this was about 8 hours away. And I finally had a computer, but we're talking early computers, but I kind of finally moved on. And I carried that typewriter to my mom in Scotland so she could use it then. And she still has it to this day. She still uses it to this day.
It will probably outlive us all.
Oh yeah. It was so heavy, man. It was so ridiculous. But yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting. That's one of those. I don't know. That's probably a good improvement, but it just amazes me whenever I pull one of those things out. It's just, I don't know. Very, very cool. Which is more fun, the Silmarillion or a Princess of Mars? See, I gotta go, King Cother. I gotta go with the Silmarillion. I'm a huge Burroughs fan. I love a Princess of Mars. Love the Tarzan stuff. But if I just want to read something, I want to know about Feanor and Galadriel and all of these timeless stories. It just, I don't know. It's the same thing. I get the same kind of response when I'm reading history. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It seems so very, very real to me. Get an old Underwood number 5 just to have it fiddle with. Yeah, those. I don't even know if you can get any type ribbon for that stuff anymore. Steve began writing in cuneiform using a reed star. A long time ago. Yeah, one of the guys over on my Twitch stream the other day said, it might have been you, King Kothar, I can't remember. Said they were 4 years old when I started Troller Games. It just cracked me up. I forget sometimes how long we've been doing this. It's kind of crazy. I see, after you read my book, you might change your mind on which book is your favorite. I mean, I haven't written it yet, but when I do, you will love it. It's on procrastination.
But I'm pretty sure it's a contender.
Yeah. Yeah, it was King Kothar. Yeah, it just cracked me up, King. That is so. It's really kind of, I don't know. It's fascinating to me because if you were to ask me, I don't think I'm any different than when I was 18 or 20. I mean, I might know a little bit more and be a little bit more forgiving of people's eccentricities because I know that everybody's got, whatever they got it. So, so there it is. But I don't know. I see myself as about 20, 22, just like I always did. Which I suppose is good. Did you cobble it? You did cobble it.
Yeah, I cobbled it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's probably about print size right there. So I think the cobbling just adds that little bit of texture.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
And look, we're just in the short time that we've been like sitting here chatting, this is kind of already beginning to come together. I've got a little bit of work to do yet, but it's beginning to pop.
Yeah, and this is going to draw people in like you wouldn't believe. I mean, this is going to be amazing. This is really going to be the perfect complement for this section of the book.
That makes me super happy. That makes me super, super, super happy. That's all I want. I you know, my job, my reward, honestly, is just people like you just being super jazzed. You know, I remember Bill Webb just looking at Teagle when I did it, and just like his face was glowing. He was so happy. I'm like, that's it. I'm good. That's all I want. And that's all I want to do for you too. I just want you to be super proud of these.
You have definitely done that. I mean, this is just absolutely amazing, and it's nice. You know, I have been doing this for a while, and there's a lot of things that I see in my mind that don't often make it to the paper for a whole variety of reasons, and it's nobody's fault. It's just, you know, the way people see things, the time constraints, all kinds of stuff. There's 10,000 things that get involved. But when I'm looking at something like this is exactly, I mean, to the T what I wanted. And it's going to be the perfect complement for this book. Absolutely. It makes me really excited. I don't know, I'm not sure if we ever decided if we should talk about the next project that you and I are going to work on. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. We're starting tomorrow.
We're starting tomorrow. And yeah, it will be a fantastic project.
I'm super jazzed about that.
So, King Kothar, would I go without pay if I was sufficiently happy, or if they were sufficiently happy? That's a really good question, because I gotta be honest with you, with people I really, really like, and the list is about 3 long right now, and Steve's on it. I don't talk money. It's like, do you want to do this? Yeah, I want to do this. Here it is. That's fantastic. I do it for the love of it. In all seriousness, I do it so like Stephen's happy. And if money exchanges hands at some point, that's cool. That's fantastic. But I actually don't do it for the money. For certain people. And Trollord is on that list.
It certainly will change hands, but it's clear that this is a labor of love. I mean, and that's kind of the nice thing, that when I'm looking at this stuff, you clearly want to do this. This isn't a chore. You know what I mean? It's not a job that's a commission you take and you don't particularly want to do. You clearly want to do it. And it shows. This makes me want to get the CKG in print. I gotta rev this up.
I'll probably do this that I'm working on now off camera. I forgot that I actually didn't finish the moat area until I actually started doing the other water, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm missing some water. But just to give it a slightly more polished feel.
So you can do with this whatever you want, but Omut, who is here with us tonight. He frequently joins us on our Twitch over at Trollord 2, and Omut has been, you know, a big supporter of Trollord for many, many, many years. But how many is it, Omut? How many of your characters have drowned in rivers in my game? At least 2, I think, maybe 3. So maybe you could put one of Omut's characters in that moat, or in one of these rivers.
Oh, in the moat?
Drowning.
Done. It's happening right now.
Only 3. There you go.
All right.
He's forever failing his swim checks as he attempts to get across the water.
Yeah, you know what?
There you go. He's trying to get in the mode. That's what he's trying to do. You seeing this, Homo? There you are.
This is what this channel is all about. These little ideas, and suddenly we've got to do it, and we sneak something in there.
That is pure awesome.
And print size, it's that. You're not even going to notice it. But we all know, especially if this becomes a poster. You should have waited for the boat to appear. Got a little bit overzealous right there.
He was impatient to get across the castle. That is awesome.
And like Elazilla says, it's all in the little details. It certainly is, and there's a little Easter egg. We know it's in there, right? Someone asked a little earlier on what program I'm using, and yeah, so Bent Metal, Wargaming Recon did say Photoshop, but just so you know, I am drawing in Photoshop, but I'm drawing in Photoshop. This is just a touch monitor, and nowadays they're actually really common. Huon do them pretty cheap. Like, you can get them for $600, $800 nowadays. This is a Wacom, but only because it supports gestures, which you don't really need. And then any program, any drawing program works. I mean, I am ink on paper. That's my background. What I'm doing, I don't want to say it's not special, but what I'm doing doesn't require special tools, I suppose I should say.
Yeah, I think you're underselling yourself, because you are clearly special. There are very few people that can do this, especially this level of detail. Yeah, I tend to always, when I run games, I will frequently have river crossings. I do that a lot for new players because there's
you
so
do what
many.
now?
Do river crossings. There's so many attribute checks that you can have players make that they can learn how to play the game very, very quickly in just getting across a river. It's one of those things, and I know you've read about this in your reading history. Crossing a river without a bridge is dangerous, especially with an army. It's not that easy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people tend to like really underestimate that side of things. But you're right. I mean, it's not easy just even on your own. I mean, I come from a Roman town of Chester. Chester has a river there called the River Dee. That's not that wide. But try swimming it. Even as a young kid when I was pretty athletic, getting about halfway across, I started getting tired. Now, how logistically, how are you going to move an army, all of your gear, all of your animals across this thing? Best of luck. I mean, they're major obstacles.
And it stops armies all the time. It's very, very interesting. And I think it's one of those things that get easily passed over. And for people who are running games, I recommend it all the time. If you're teaching someone how to do it, have them roll up against a river, because they're going to have to do something, swim. There's a lot of checks. They're going to have to build a bridge. There's a lot of checks. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do, because it is a major obstacle.
That's one thing I like as a GM, is actually not everything has to be a combat. It can be also about obstacles, terrain obstacles.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of terrain. Equipment and terrain and NPCs are three of my main things. Certainly encounters where you're fighting, the ogres or whatever. But any kind of terrain you can use to really make a game challenging. And if you hone up on your descriptions a little bit, I just throw in some keywords, you can fire people's imaginations a lot. And then weather, of course, is a huge thing that you can bring into the table. There's all kinds of stuff that's not, just geared around cleaving skulls and blazing shields. And anyone, I'm sure a lot of these people in the stream, if you've camped or been outside in inclement weather, it can beat you up. It'll knock you down, that's for sure.
It was actually the outside, like I never go there. I don't nowadays. But it was actually, I think it was sitting on a train going through the Oregon coastline, the Oregon wilderness, and watching the forestry next to me. And I was thinking, actually walking through that forestry with gear would not be easy. Fighting in it would not be easy. You've got so much overgrowth and stuff all around you. You're not swinging a spear around in there easily. And that really started to get my imagination going then.
So I'll tell a little army story. When I was in the army, I was a wire dog. So it was back in the early 90s, before everything had gone completely digital. But I had to lay wire, and I had to lay wire from command post to like the medical area to the Chinooks and to whatever. And sometimes this wire could be mile and a half long, and you had to drag it through the brush. And I remember, so basically what you do is you got your web gear on, which is your shoulder pack and whatnot. You tie the wire to your belt, and you walk, dragging, and the wire will be on a spool, and it'll come off the spool as you walk and wind through. Well, I went through an area that had no trails or roads or whatever, I had a helmet, my M16, and the web gear, and then of course the wire attached to the belt. And I was so mad by the time I got about halfway through that, because every 5 steps a tree branch would drive up into my helmet, knock my helmet off, or get tangled up into the strap. My M16 strap would get hung up thing. Tree branches would be stuck in my web gear. I'd stagger forward and stomp my toe. I cannot even imagine doing that in plate mail with a backpack. And just absolutely not. There's just no way. Laying wire, a good walk spoiled. Oh yeah, it was spoiled. Let me tell you, that story had a horrible ending because I went, I don't know, about a little over half a mile, and the wire started getting, WD-1 wire gets heavy after a while, but I just couldn't move it. And so I'd back up a little bit, and you catch it hung on a root or something, and then I'd unhook that and drag it. And now you always have to have someone watching your spool to make sure if you have to backtrack, when it respools, it doesn't get tangled up. Well, after I don't know how many whatevers, I got so hung up, and at one point I had thrown down my web gear, my M16 and helmet, and I was just, with all my strength, just pulling that wire, just dragging it. I was so angry. After trying to do this forever and a day, I was like, "God, to hell with this. I got to see what's wrong with this thing." So I finally gathered my gear and I went back. And the Sergeant McNary, who had been watching the spool, had gone off to lunch. And the spool, I had pulled the spool over. It had gotten tangled up, and I was dragging the spool through the woods. And that clearly wasn't going to go far because it got hung on a tree, within a few hundred feet. So I'd basically been stretching this WD-1 wire. I don't think I've ever been so angry in my entire life. That was a good walk spoiled for a certainty. Yeah, machete would have been very good. I was in Hawaii, so we couldn't cut anything up. There was a whole lot of rules from the state that we couldn't do. And black flies and skeeters, yep. I was stationed in Hawaii, so I went to I did basic in South Carolina, Fort something. Charleston? No, that's not right. Fort something. And then I did AIT at Fort Gordon, Georgia, and then I did jump school at Fort Benning, and then I got stationed of the 500 people that left jump school, 498 went to the 82nd Airborne Division. 2 of us went to Hawaii, and I was one of those. It was really funny. Yeah, my Army my Army service was funny too, because when I got to Hawaii, no one knew it. They didn't have orders for me. No one did. So I got to the replacement battalion, and I stayed in that replacement battalion for about 5 weeks. I had to get up in the morning, fall into formation. There was me and occasionally another person. Eat breakfast, and then I was done for the day. So I just wandered around Honolulu.
What the hell?
Crazy. For 5 weeks. And I remember I was sitting there in the rec room watching TV when First Sergeant Mendiola walked in, and he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Special Chenault." And he said, "Who are you assigned to?" I said, "I haven't been assigned to anybody." He goes, "All right, I'm taking you." So he scooped me up and took me off to his unit. It was really funny. It was just hilarious. My Army career in a nutshell.
Is there a source for the moat? It was actually, this is based upon the real castle of Harlequin, and I believe it comes from a river, which in this particular drawing falls behind everything.
Oh, very cool. Harlequin Castle, I've heard of that. I think that's in that Palladium book.
It's apparently a real-life castle in England, but I think it's southern England, and it's remarkably intact. I think it's southern England.
There's some beautiful castles still. England got to enjoy a little bit of comfort in the big wars, but there's some beautiful intact buildings over there.
Oh yeah.
I was there from 91 to 93, and I was in Fort Shafter. Nope, I was not in Fort Shafter. Damn it, what is that? I can't remember anything. I was on top of the island, whatever barracks. Schofield Barracks, good Lord of mercy. Man, my memory's beginning to fade. Maybe I'm not 19 years old anymore. I can't remember anything.
Well, and I don't want to stop this party, but we are past our hour and a half, Stephen, and I want to be very cognizant of your time here. I do. That time just blew by. You have a great crowd that came in, and this was just fun.
Yeah, this was a blast. I didn't know an hour and a half had even passed. Good heavens. Thank you, War Gaming Recon. Much appreciated. Schofield, did you ever get to the Other Realms Games days? That doesn't sound familiar. What was the game shop down in Waikiki? Damn it, what was that? No, it wasn't in Waikiki. It was in Aiea. Can't remember. It's been a long time since I was in Hawaii. I absolutely loved it over there. It was a lot of fun. Weather got a little bit boring, but I got to tell you, I've traveled a little bit, and I've never been anywhere that I haven't. I enjoyed Canada. I loved England. I was in England for a little while. France, loved it. I don't know. I like stomping around. Pearl City, yes. Jellies, yes. Pearl City, there you go. Long time ago. So I'm guessing, tabletop, yeah, you said you were in Kanoe. Now, is that the Marine barracks? I'm not saying that right. Kanoe. Is that the Marine barracks on the other side? I didn't explore the other side of the island very much. I was very poor in those days. I had 2 cars in Hawaii, both of which broke down. Yes, the Marine barracks. All right, there you go. It's all slowly coming back to me. According. Well, thank you for your service, Tabletop Santa. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know. One of these days, I'm gonna sit down and write a history of all this stuff. I started writing a history of Troll Lord Games, and I got, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks into it, and it was so much. I thought, good God, it's just too much stuff. So I quit. Come to Michigan. We've got a castle, pine forest, giant-ass lakes, and forts and caves. There you go. I've never been to Michigan. Tramped all over the place, but I haven't been to, what are those, the Northwest states? Is that what they call them? Michigan? Been through Indiana, Illinois, and Ohio, but never stayed much. Very cool, tabletop. And into the later years. There you go. Well, so one of the coolest things, this is what I love about RPGs, and I love about the way Aird's kind of developed. This game that I'm running for these younger guys, they were kind of going, we're in the world of Air, of course, and they were kind of going through some of this stuff. And one of them found, so there's this story in Air where one of the gods, Orindul, who is an evil god, slew his sister, Mordias, one of the good gods. And when as she fell, her blood, she lifted her blood up because she wasn't completely destroyed and tried to strangle Orindul with it. And then he gathered that blood and made a cloak out of it. And it's called the Cloak of Red in the world of Air. And I've always I've never thought much about it beyond it's something that Orindul possesses. But it's essentially the spirit of Mordias that he's bound to him. Well, it's destroyed by a dragon later on and scattered across the world. Well, these guys that I'm running, these kids that I'm running on Sundays now, they were reading about the Cloak of Red, and they have decided, one of them has decided the Cloak of Red is actually a good thing, and it needs to be reassembled to bring Mordias back. And there's this whole campaign now built upon what they read in the Codex, and a completely different interpretation of what I had originally intended, the whole thing to be. And it's so very, very cool that I'm going with it. So the Andanuth 2, that's part of the Andanuth 2. This is the continuing story. And the game, again, has woven itself into my writing. And this is just to kind of illustrate the point that all of us at these gaming tables, there's so much creativity on both sides of the screen that it's nothing short of astounding. It really isn't. I see my brother in the Marines told me how he had to pick up his guys from the brig in the morning. Not sure if in Pearl or not. He would get a big long van, and he would drill them all morning. Oh yeah, there's a lot of folks who would have to get picked up in the morning. I remember that. That's a whole lot of hard drinking. You get kind of bored in the Army. The end of the 2, the electric boogaloo. There you go. All right, but we are over, and I do have to go. I would love to stay for a little longer, but we should do this more often, Elisa. This has been a lot of fun.
Would love to. Would absolutely love to. Let's make sure that we do it. And I think it's worth mentioning too. I think a week on Sunday. So we're actually going to be at TotalCon. Actually, TotalCon on Sunday, talking about Gaxmore with Ernie Gygax too.
Oh, very cool. Excellent.
So with that said, Stephen, thanks. Thank you so much for joining. And all of you trolls out there, you're wonderful people. Thank you for joining and making it a really hopping chat. Hopefully you're having fun and are happy with how I'm handling this work for Troll Lord Games. I'm having a blast with it. I really am. And I'm honored to be part of this project.
Oh, this is just amazing. Thank you for taking this on, and thank you for having me on your stream tonight. This has just been a lot of fun, and this is just amazing. What you're doing here is just amazing.
Thank you. So all of you, thanks so much for being here. You can actually find me on Patreon. You can find me on Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, all under Alyssa Faden. So if you want to see more, if you want to see my views just on mapping in general, or unboxing things, including the Gaxmore package, check me out there. Until then, everyone, thanks so much. I'm going to be streaming again next Monday. Until then, Stephen, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And I will say goodnight to you all. I'll see you on the flip side. Much love. Thanks, everyone.
Later, everyone.